27 years we've been asking, who could take a 6-year-old boy and murder him and decapitate him? Who? We needed to know. We needed to know.
On a warm July afternoon in 1981, a 6-year-old boy walked into a Sears department store in Hollywood, Florida, holding his mother's hand. Moments later, he was gone. No screams, no struggle, just silence. 2 weeks later, more than 100 miles away, a drainage canal revealed the unthinkable, the severed head of Adam Walsh. His small face, once full of curiosity and joy, was now a symbol of horror for an entire nation. The man who would later confess to Adam's murder died behind bars, never convicted. The evidence? Lost. The details? Conflicted. And the family left behind? Forever shattered. This wasn't just a missing child. This was a national reckoning. A case that asked every parent in America one haunting question. If it could happen to Adam, could it happen to mine? Adam John Walsh was a bright, curious 6-year-old boy with a gentle smile that could light up an entire room. He loved Star Wars, drawing, and playing catch in the front yard of his family's South Florida home. His laughter often echoed down the hallways, the kind of unfiltered, innocent joy that only children truly know. He was the only child of John and Reve Walsh, who adored him. Their lives revolve around Adam's happiness. Weekend trips to the beach, bedtime stories, and Saturday errands where Adam would proudly help carry the bags. That's what made July 27th feel so ordinary. A simple trip to Sears, a moment that should have been just another mother-son outing. Adam had dreams, too, of being a pilot one day, or maybe a policeman like the ones he admired on TV. He was polite, trusting, and often described by neighbors as wise beyond his years. But beneath his calm demeanor, he was still a little boy, someone who believed the world was safe as long as his parents were nearby. In the summer of 1981, Hollywood, Florida was the kind of suburban coastal town that promised safety. Nestled between Miami and Fort Lauderdale, it offered palm-lined streets, quiet neighborhoods, and families who left their doors unlocked without thinking twice. Children played in sprinkler-soaked front lawns while parents chatted across driveways. It was a postcard version of American normalcy, sun-soaked, slow-paced, and seemingly untouched by violence. The Hollywood Mall, where the Walsh family had gone that day, was a symbol of that suburban calm. It was more than a shopping center. It was a community hub, a place where families came to browse, cool off from the heat, and let their children marvel at toy aisles while parents ran errands. On July 27th, the Sears department store bustled with shoppers and kids gathered around an in-store video game display, mesmerized by the early magic of digital adventure. But beneath the surface of that calm exterior, Florida was changing. In the early 1980s, the state was experiencing a population boom. Transient communities were growing, motels that doubled as long-term housing, day laborers moving from job to job, and hitchhikers traveling along the major highways that crisscrossed the state. Among them, darker figures drifted through unnoticed, men with criminal histories, mental illness, and violent pasts who blended in without a trace. One of them was Ottis Toole. The intersection of innocence and evil came quietly. There were no sirens, no warnings, just a boy who wandered out of sight, and a town that would never be the same again. Hollywood, Florida had sold itself on safety, but on that day, it became a symbol of just how fragile that illusion really was. It began with a mother's rising panic, the kind that starts as a quiet worry and turns, minute by minute, into terror. Reve Walsh had only stepped away briefly. She'd left Adam near the video game kiosk of the Sears store, where a group of older boys crowded around an Atari console. She told him to stay put. He always listened, but when she returned just a few minutes later, Adam was gone. At first, she searched calmly. Maybe he had wandered to another aisle. Maybe he was watching the TVs or looking at toys. But with every passing second, the calm unraveled. Her calls echoed through the store. Adam, Adam, met with nothing but the ambient noise of air conditioning and distant chatter. Employees were notified. An announcement went over the store intercom. Shoppers paused, confused, concerned. Reve ran from department to department, her voice cracking, her hands trembling. By the time mall security became involved, nearly an hour had passed. When police were finally called, there was no immediate sense of urgency. It was the early 80s, and the concept of stranger danger hadn't yet burned its way into the national consciousness. The assumption was that Adam had wandered off, that he'd be found in the arcade or maybe in the parking lot. A missing child wasn't yet treated like a potential abduction. But Reve knew something was wrong. A mother always knows. Outside, Florida's summer sun beat down on the parking lot, oblivious to the fear growing inside. Patrol cars arrived slowly. Officers took notes, asked questions, looked around with a casual caution that didn't match the frantic beating of a mother's heart. There were no surveillance cameras, no Amber Alerts, just a growing sense of dread that clung to every corner of the store, every echoing footstep, every unanswered call for a boy who should have been there, smiling, waiting, safe. He was gone, and no one knew it yet, but so was the illusion that Hollywood, Florida was the kind of place where children couldn't simply disappear. The early stages of the investigation into the disappearance and eventual murder of Adam Walsh were marked by uncertainty, miscommunication, and missed opportunities. In 1981, police departments were not equipped with the rapid response protocols for missing children that exist today. There was no centralized database, no Amber Alert system, and tragically, no sense of how quickly a child could vanish without a trace. When the Hollywood Police Department arrived at the Sears store, they initially treated Adam's disappearance as a lost child case. Officers assumed he had wandered off or gotten separated from his mother amid the crowds. The idea of abduction wasn't immediately considered, and crucial early hours slipped by without a lockdown, canvas, or perimeter search. Mall security did little to preserve the scene, and there was no immediate effort to collect surveillance information, because, at that time, the store didn't have cameras monitoring public areas. Witnesses later came forward saying they had seen a child matching Adam's description being ordered out of the store by a security guard, or someone impersonating one, after a scuffle broke out between boys at the video game kiosk. Yet these accounts were vague and often conflicted. Some witnesses recalled a man leading a crying boy out of the store. Others couldn't confirm whether it was Adam. No composite sketch was generated in those first days. The delay in treating the incident as a potential crime meant that these memories faded or distorted over time. Flyers were printed. The Walsh family, desperate and devastated, did everything in their power to raise awareness. Media coverage intensified, but tips flooded in from across the state, overwhelming investigators and pulling them in every direction. Calls poured in from psychics, false leads were followed, and local suspects were interrogated with little result. Then, on August 10th, 2 weeks after Adam went missing, a gruesome discovery was made over 100 miles away in a drainage canal near Yeehaw Junction. A child's severed head was found by a passing trucker. It was quickly confirmed to be Adam's. His body was never recovered. From that moment, the investigation shifted into a homicide, but the damage had already been done. Evidence from the crime scene was minimal. The head had been exposed to the elements, limiting forensic possibilities. There was no DNA processing technology at the time, and without a body, the scope of the investigation was restricted. Years later, Ottis Toole, a drifter and self-proclaimed serial killer. In the haunting aftermath of Adam Walsh's abduction, the investigation cast a wide net over possible suspects. But amid confusion, desperation, and a growing media frenzy, one name rose above the rest: Ottis Toole. Ottis Toole, a drifter with a long criminal record and a disturbing history of violence. Ottis Toole emerged as the primary suspect years after Adam's murder. In 1983, while already in custody for unrelated crimes, Toole confessed to abducting Adam from the Sears store and brutally killing him. He claimed he lured Adam into his vehicle with the promise of toys and candy, then drove him over 100 miles before committing the unthinkable. Toole's confession was graphic and detailed, disturbingly so, aligning with elements of the case not released to the public. He admitted to decapitating Adam and discarding the head in the drainage canal near Yeehaw Junction. Yet Toole later recanted his confession, only to confess again and then recant once more. This pattern of erratic behavior cast doubt on his credibility. Authorities were frustrated by the lack of physical evidence tying him to the scene. In a devastating blow to the case, critical pieces of evidence, including Toole's impounded car, which may have held forensic proof, were inexplicably lost by law enforcement. Though Toole had no known relationship with the Walsh family, his crimes fit a chilling pattern. He was known to prey on children and claimed to have killed dozens across multiple states. His volatile personality and tendency to insert himself in high-profile cases made some question whether he was seeking attention or absolution. Still, in 2008, nearly 3 decades after Adam's murder, the Hollywood Police Department officially closed the case, declaring they were satisfied that Ottis Toole had killed Adam. The decision was met with both relief and sorrow by the Walsh family, though questions still lingered. Other early suspects and public theories. In the chaotic days following Adam's disappearance, several leads pointed investigators in conflicting directions. Store employees and security guards. Witnesses claimed a man posing as a security guard may have escorted Adam out of Sears after an argument near the video game section. No specific identity was confirmed, and some witnesses contradicted others. Was it a Real guard or someone pretending to be one? No answer was ever found. Family and acquaintances. As with most child abduction cases, early suspicion fell on those closest to the child. John and Reve Walsh were questioned extensively, but quickly ruled out. Still, some in the public, influenced by sensationalist reporting, speculated wildly about motives or cover-ups, despite the lack of evidence. False confessors and serial killers. Several other criminals confessed to the murder over the years, only to be discredited. The notoriety of Adam's case made it a target for those seeking attention or deals from law enforcement. Public and media reaction. The case gripped the nation. News anchors shared theories. Talk shows speculated endlessly. The public, horrified and hungry for justice, clung to every new suspect's name, desperate for resolution. But with each confession recanted, each clue lost, the tension only deepened. In the end, despite the closure brought by Toole's posthumous confirmation, a cloud of doubt still hangs over the case. Not just because of what was done to Adam, but because of what was missed. The legal proceedings in the case of Adam Walsh are as haunting for their absence as they are for what they represent. Despite a public confession, a named suspect, and decades of grief, no trial ever took place for Adam's murder. There was no courtroom showdown, no cross-examinations, and no moment where a jury delivered justice on his behalf. When Ottis Toole confessed to the murder in 1983, law enforcement initially believed they had their man. His account was chilling and, in many ways, consistent with known facts. But Toole, already serving multiple life sentences for other murders, was an unreliable narrator, mentally unstable, prone to contradictions, and known to confess to crimes he hadn't committed. The prosecution faced a critical barrier, a lack of physical evidence. Toole's car, which he claimed held Adam's remains and the blood-stained carpet, had been carelessly lost by the Jacksonville Police Department, along with other potential forensic materials. Without the car, without the body, and with only a vacillating confession, there was no way to build a case that would hold up in court. The legal system stalled. Toole recanted his confession, then admitted it again, then changed the details. Each time, the possibility of trial slipped further away. Prosecutors, now backed into a corner, chose not to indict. And so the case remained in legal limbo, not forgotten, but unresolved. Years passed. Adam's father, John Walsh, became an advocate for crime victims and a household name through America's Most Wanted. But Adam's own case remained locked behind closed files. In December 2008, after a cold case review and with Toole long dead from liver failure, the Hollywood Police Department held a press conference. They officially closed the case, naming Ottis Toole as Adam's killer. There was no trial, no defense, no verdict. Just a declaration, nearly 3 decades too late, that the man who confessed was the one they believed responsible. For the Walsh family, it was a kind of justice, but an imperfect one. They had long believed Toole was guilty. Still, there was no gavel, no sentence, no resolution that could ever match the magnitude of their loss. Adam Walsh never got his day in court, and the silence of that courtroom is perhaps the loudest echo left in this case. Adam Walsh's case is more than a tragedy. It is a mirror reflecting the cracks in the systems we trusted to protect our children. What began as a routine afternoon in a department store became a national reckoning, not just with the horror of child abduction, but with the devastating consequences of inaction, delay, and institutional failure. In the weeks following Adam's disappearance, the slow response from law enforcement wasn't just a lapse. It was a symptom of a system that hadn't yet evolved to meet the urgency of a missing child. There were no protocols, no databases, no coordinated search effort that could span cities and counties in real time. Adam wasn't failed just by the man who took him. He was failed by a country unprepared for the reality of such evil. And yet, from that failure came a fire. John and Reve Walsh transformed their grief into action, launching a movement that forever changed how missing children are handled. Because of Adam, Code Adam was created. Because of Adam, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was born. Because of Adam, millions of children have been found, saved, and brought home. His name became a line in the sand, a symbol of what must never happen again. But justice, real justice, never came. There was no trial, no cross-examination, no undeniable closure. And while the case was declared solved in 2008, the lack of conviction leaves a painful void that the passage of time can never fill. For the Walsh family, and for the nation that watched with them, the truth is clear. Healing doesn't always come with answers. Adam's story reminds us that evil can strike in the most ordinary of places, that safety is never guaranteed, and that awareness is not paranoia, it's protection. We remember Adam not just for what was taken from him, but for what he gave the world in return, a legacy of vigilance, of change, and of hope carved out from unimaginable loss. The question remains, for every parent and every community, are we doing enough so this never happens again?